Thanks so much for joining me for the first Test of the Month meeting of 2021, a year that sounded terribly futuristic when I was a child. So glad we made it this far. So this month's theme, because I do try to have a theme, even if it's a bit loose, is weird donation triggers. I was reading through some of the literature, and these are three oddballs that I had not heard anymore anywhere else. So we're going to talk about nostalgia as a donation trigger, avoiding embarrassment as a donation trigger, and concave things rather than convex things as a donation trigger, which I never thought I'd say, but here we go. So looking at nostalgia and how it works for all of us, the researchers looked and said that we know that nostalgia, when people are going back to an idealized and usually imagined past, that can bolster social bonds, especially if people are talking about the same things for which they're nostalgic. And there was some evidence that it increases charitable behaviors, kind of that warm glow and pro-social ideas, but less about how if I appeal to someone with nostalgia, how do they behave? And so this research, these researchers looked at this. First, before they went into that, they looked at if you're appealing to someone for a charitable donation, do you look at self-benefit versus other benefit? So we all know what the results are going to be on this before the researchers do, but they have to do it as the first step. Other benefit appeals work better. So it's statistically better to talk about the benefit that your donation gives to others rather than the benefit that you get off yourself. Honestly, I'm a little surprised it's as close as it is, even though it is statistically significantly different. So how does nostalgia factor into this? So their thinking is that because I have increased empathy when I think of nostalgia, it will increase donations for other focused appeals. And so the way the researchers did this, and they said, before you take this test, write about something that you're nostalgic for. So put yourself back into that mindset. And so half the people had that, half of the people were writing about something that was neutral. I feel bad for the people who have to write the neutral thing in these processes. Sounds pretty boring, quite honestly. So how do those interact? When you prime nostalgia, the other focus, self-focus difference actually increases, and you increase the likelihood that someone is going to donate to something that is focused on someone else. If you're not priming that nostalgia, actually the self-focused benefits become a little bit more salient. And so there's a significant difference between the other focus, self-focused, and the conclusion that you can draw from this is if you can tap into that nostalgia and make the people think about that idealized past, it does make people more likely to donate to help others. So this is something that we can bring up in our copy or in the way that we present an ad or those sorts of things. An unusual arrow in the quiver. And I gotta say, it's gonna get a little bit weirder from here on in, because we're now going to talk about embarrassment. So first, let's start with the good news about embarrassment. All of the literature on this says that we think we have been hideously embarrassed by a lot of things that go on in our lives, but our blunders often go unnoticed. There's this thing called the spotlight effect that says that you think people are always looking at you, and honestly, they don't pay that much attention to you. And there was a study on this that I remember where they had college students go into their classes wearing a Neil Diamond t-shirt, big Neil Diamond fan t-shirt. And everyone is thinking, oh my goodness, people are going to be looking at me and thinking about me and laughing about it. But something like only 20% of people actually noticed that Neil Diamond t-shirt, even though it was kind of loud and out there. And honestly, once you are embarrassed, people have more empathy than we think they do. Not we think we do. Um, and so when people are embarrassed, oftentimes people are there with you. Oh, you dropped your papers all over. Here, let me help you for that. Or they're thinking better of you as a result. So next time you're embarrassed, know that maybe people didn't catch it, and those who did probably have empathy for you because everyone's been there. Now, the interesting part for what we're talking about is, can embarrassment make you donate? So as people, when you're embarrassed, you try to manage your reputation. Oh, either leaning into it, oh, I'm such a klutz, or saying that rarely happens, or puffing your chest out and those sorts of things. But since donations are a part of reputation management, can being embarrassed make you want to donate? So these researchers posited that there's a gender difference. Now we're going to be talking about in this slide some stereotypes, I would say, that the researchers are engaging in. They are to some extent backed up by scientific literature, but know that obviously there's no all men are this way and all females are this way. And they looked at male versus female without considering any other options on the gender spectrum. It is what it is in this case. So they looked at male versus female. They looked at the literature and said females tend to be more communal and males tend to be more individualistic. And they in fact use those as proxies for communalism and individualism, which is a shortcut that perhaps you could get away with not doing. But we deal with the studies as they exist, not as we might wish them to be. So will that embarrassment change whether organizations are supported or which organizations are supported? And does that embarrassment change depending on gender, given these looks at where females and males tend to be on the communal individualistic spectrum? So their first test, they primed people, and this is in a grocery store, with either an embarrassing product or a regular product. And adult diapers were the embarrassing product and regular product was paper towels. And the researcher would say, Sally's here and she's looking at the adult diapers out really loud to maximize the embarrassment potential. So yes, they embarrassed people for science. And then they said, you want a pen as a thank you gift? And they gave them either the option of, do you want a university logo or do you want it logoless? And they found that when people were embarrassed, women became more likely to take the university pen to show that affiliation and to go to that communal aspect of things. And men were more likely to take the pen without the logo, presumably to show their individuality. So then they went in and did the same embarrassment manipulation, and they said, $10, you can give it to either an in-group charity, a charity that is local and focused potentially on your needs, or an out-group charity, one that might help people halfway across the world who you don't know, those sorts of things. So females preferred the in-group charity regardless of the embarrassment manipulation. Whether they were embarrassed or not, they preferred to give to more communal, more community-based activities. Men donated more to the in-group charity when they were embarrassed and donated more to the out-group charity in the control condition. So what this shows is when people are embarrassed, they tend to go to their defaults, internal if they're internal focused, external if they're external focused. I am not entirely sure how you would manipulate embarrassment in appeals. This is one that I put out to the group, and I'm very curious to see if anyone is able to make something of it. It is an interesting result that embarrassment make someone more likely to donate in certain circumstances. But especially until we get face-to-face fully back or events back, I'm not sure how we would manipulate this embarrassment. And then there's the weirdest one of all, convex versus concave. So the hypothesis is that a concave shape, so something that's caved in, can prime viewers with the need to belong, thus increasing donations. And the reason that they thought of this is that in ergonomics and in visual arts, apparently concave screens are viewed as more surrounding, more immersive. And when you're with other people in a concave or a rounded space, you feel more community and empathy with them. And I know this sounds weird, but that is the previous studies on this. So will it increase donations? So the test one was, I'm going to look at a, there's a great embarrassment manipulation in the chat that I have to read out. We had a donor once who hosted a house party. She wanted a Post-it note placed on every guest that was only removed once they pledged. So that is probably a very highly effective appeal. And if you believe these researchers, that would perhaps tend to work with both males and females. Whether you have in-group tendencies or out-group tendencies, you would tend to donate in that circumstances. Another comment, some organizations talk about guilt as a motivator, and our work is incredibly important. Would there be an embarrassment angle to that? Potentially. That also works on the level of people like me do things like this. And so there's sort of a social norming process to it to say that, you know, people like you would normally be donating. You haven't donated in a couple of years. One challenge with guilt as a motivator. So there was a study on environmental looks at pride versus guilt as the sought emotional outcome. And what they found was that people donated more than the control condition. If you prime them with either pride, you will feel pride if you donate, or if you said, I will feel guilt if you don't donate. So both of those worked on the donation side. However, on the guilt side of things, people were far less likely to take environmentally friendly actions in their everyday life. And so using guilt could suppress people acting in accordance with your mission in other areas of their life. Guilt also is more challenging to replicate in terms of people who are primed by guilt tend not to retain as well. Barb mentions here that people do place last gift reminders on lapsed gifts. St. Jude does as well. And that's been proven to be effective, I would say, across the board. There was a study, and I don't remember the authors, but on the American Red Cross, and just putting that date in there, I believe, increased response rate by 20%. So it's a very effective technique. And honestly, some of that's guilt, but some of it's just people even someone who's lapsed for years may consider themselves a donor because they honestly don't remember when they last donated. And they don't have kind of the calendar in their head like we do, the kind of norm of you should donate once a year to be an active donor. And so if donating when the mood strikes you is your mode of being a donor, that date can be a reminder, hey, it's been a while, I should send them a check. So concave, flat, or convex board, people put the charitable peel on. The concave board raised about 50% more money, which shocked me that it would be that significant. But having that board that came around you was apparently a more immersive experience and increased empathy and caused people to give more. Test 2 repeated that, but also asked about need to belong. and there was a significant increase in need to belong when you were looking at a concave display. So that may be part of what causes this to be effective. They also did the same test, but first they did a scrambled word puzzle that either fulfilled or didn't fulfill their need to belong. So if you did a word puzzle that had a lot of community-based words in it, you already feel part of a community. And so it's a way that researchers do to manipulate your emotional state. And when people didn't solve their need to belong first, they gave significantly more to the concave display. But when they did solve it before they came in, there was no statistically significant difference between concave and convex. So this test kind of shows us that the convex concave effect comes from this need to belong. If we're in this closed-in community space, we are more likely to donate because we need to belong to the community that we're a part of. And then people read that they were either part of the in-group for a local park or part of the out-group for a local park. If they were outside looking in and they didn't have that need to belong priming, they had a convex charity appeal, their donations plummeted. I'm not part of the group. I have no need to be part of the group, and therefore I will not give. Everyone else gave at about the same level. And my guess is that the in-group level there is part of what we saw on the previous slide, that knowing that they were part of the in-group fulfilled that need to belong, that need to be a part of a community. So people were satisfied and didn't need to give more. But some remarkable results from just how something is positioned in a live environment. And so I present this not just because of concave convex. That's perhaps a trick that would work at events or in displays in your office. But the other thing that goes along with this is if you can prime that need to belong, that idea that you're being a part of something greater than yourselves, something that we all try to achieve in a lot of our copy, that is a priming effect that works, whether you're priming it with a concave display or with words. So in retrospect, not as weird as I thought, but it was certainly nothing that occurred to me before I had read that study about concave and convex displays. So I will open it up for questions at this point. We'd had some good discussion in the chat. Would love to see any questions you have there or in the Q&A. As well as, and this is the cheap plug that I do at about every time this thing, we are looking for, as you know, two things. The first one is we would love to have folks come on and present tests that they have done that are live that they think others would be interested in. There's a great appetite for folks on this call seeing what other folks are doing and how that's being effective. I'm working to source some of those from our more companies, but would love to see them from the participants on this call as well. The second thing is, if you have things that you have questions about, topics that you would like covered, we are always happy to try to focus on those whenever possible. I love the opportunity to delve into a new area of research and go either, yes, this is a settled question, or no, we need more testing in this area. And I'm not seeing any questions in the chat or comments in the chat. So let me say, if you do come up with, you have a test you want to share, you have a question afterwards, or you have questions that you would like the research to be added to, please reach out to me. My email address is nellinger, that's Nellinger, at more, MOORE, dmgroup.com. So nellinger at moredmgroup.com. Look forward to hearing from you, and we can give you back about 9 minutes of your day. Thank you so much for your time today.